Hey guys, before we start this episode of the Nerds and Jesus podcast, moving forward, our nerdy news of the week will be at the end of every episode, so make sure to stay tuned to the very end, and let's go ahead and roll the theme song for this episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the Nerds and Jesus podcast. Welcome. My name is Mary Howell. I'm a Christian and a worship leader who happens to also be a huge nerd according to myself, all of my friends, family, and coworkers. And recently I've been wanting to discuss how Christian nerds are to navigate living in the secular world, how we are to be a light in the darkness while also nerding out on all types of fandoms pop culture has to offer. Today we will be asking and answering the question, can Christians play D&D? But I am not on this podcast alone, as I am joined this week by my coworker, student director at his church, anime and D&D nerd, Jord'n, and also joined by my bestie, Harry Potter and D&D nerd, Dezerae Manir. Des and Jord'n, how's it going?
It's going very well.
It's going good.
Thanks so much. You know, we're jumping back in to the topic of D&D, and super excited about this topic. Fun fact for all the listeners, did we try to record this or last time when we did this and it did not record well on my end? Yes. Surprise episode last week of talking about the future of the Nerds and Jesus podcast. I was panicking, and thanks guys for jumping on this week last minute before I leave out of the country on Sunday. So really appreciate it. Obviously, D&D, you know, last time we spoke, we talked about the D&D movie, super great movie. I had realized as there was a few things that I missed on it that we had talked about and didn't even realize the fact that they filmed parts of the movie where they filmed Harry Potter.
I did not know that. Did they really? Like my mouth is like in a full O right now.
I recognized it and completely forgot for us to talk about it. And I had to mention it again when we jumped back on this pod since it is D&D related, but
I didn't. Which one? Because they filmed in like multiple different locations. Which one was it?
It was the part whenever they returned back from jail and they were waiting so that he can see his daughter. That was the hallway, the big scene. Like that was.
How did I miss that?
Anyway, so I was like, oh man, we had to talk about that. Let's jump back in. So obviously we're talking about D&D today. And so one of the questions that I'm asking y'all and I'll also answer is, how long have you been playing D&D and how did you get started playing D&D?
I started, back in 2018, I think, maybe 2017. I've always kind of wanted to play. I always knew about it and it always interested me. I remember this one time I was in college and I saw a guy with a D&D shirt and I was like, bro, can you tell me about that? He told me about it. I was like, that sounds awesome. And he kind of said, well, my campaign's full. Otherwise I'd let you join and stuff like that. But around 2018, my life group leader, actually, we started talking about it afterwards, about D&D, and we all got together, all the guys in the life group and their wives, and we just kind of hung out and played D&D for a long time, probably about a year-ish, a little bit over a year, I think. And then I actually moved away and they kept playing. And now I've been a part of a campaign for a year and a half now that's been beating up every other week. So
how about you, Des?
For me, it's been quite a few years. We started together, you and me, Mary. We did our first one. How long ago was it?
Man, this must have been
4 or 5 years ago.
2016. It was after I graduated college.
Yeah, and I think it was a small group of us too. It was like Miranda, our friend Miranda, and Justin, I think, was someone he played with.
It was just a random group of people.
I can't really remember. I don't know how it got started. I just know that we're such big gamers. Like we play board games all the time, and like massive groups of people come, and we just throw those types of parties. So I don't know how it came about. I just know that we've all known about D&D, but we never actually got into it until was one day we just decided to, and we've just been playing ever since. So yeah, that's great.
Man, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was because we always played board games that was something that our group always did. But some of the guys in the group, you know, they've had played D&D and they asked us, you know, would you want to try learning how to play D&D? And I was like, wait a minute, we get to like make up things and like role play. Yes, I'm here for it. Like I was already like in it the minute they talked about it. And I was super excited. And I mean, it took a while to really kind of learn how to play because there's so much to it. Honestly, I think to this day, I still have to read some of the rules. And I'm like, wait, which one was it again? And I think maybe some people don't want to play it just because there's a lot of rules to it, or maybe because the role playing is not their thing. But man, it's once you get past like, you know, the general rules of the game, it is probably one of the most fun games. And I actually haven't played in a hot minute. With life got kind of crazy. We played, I think the last time we played, I think was the end of a campaign, Jord'n, that you were in last year. So I think we talked about it on the last pod. I can't remember, but man, that was such a fun campaign. And our friend Kyle did such a great job in DMing that. And we've all taken roles of DMing. And man, I hope to one day have like do a one shot of us playing D&D on this pod. So that'd be so much fun.
That would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. But yeah, I'm super excited about that. And obviously one of the questions, you know, I guess, well, there's a lot of other questions I have lined up, but you know, as a Christian, did you all have like any reservations when you first heard, like, or first was asked to play D&D or like started playing D&D, or was it kind of like, you know, what was your first reactions with that?
I think for me, I didn't really think too much of it. I was a little cautious of it just because there were obviously like our older people in our lives, you know, sometimes they are a little cautious and protective of us. You know, my grandparents were a little cautious about me, you know, joining and doing D&D because, you know, they're from the 70s, the 60s. They, you know, they've lived that and know that, I mean, sometimes it can get into dark places, obviously, but, I kind of came in with an open mind just because, I mean, we play a bunch of different games. And so I have my morals and my values and, you know, so yeah.
Yeah. How about you, Jord'n?
I think for me, I didn't really have any kind of hesitation towards it. I kind of lean a little bit more towards like the idea that I'm good because I have the Holy Spirit. So that's just kind of always been my mentality towards it. And I'm like, well, I have the Holy Spirit. So if anything happens like that I shouldn't be around, it's going to tell me and then I'm just going to stop doing it. And so that was kind of my mentality with it, was like, I didn't even think like, it's just fake. Like, I mean, I love Lord of the Rings, right? And like, there's different deities and whatnot inside that I also love Chronicles of Narnia. And so all the other stuff with the fantasy and all those things really interested me. So I didn't really have much, a lot of hesitation towards it, especially when I kind of found out that you're kind of in control of it. If you don't want something, you don't need to do it. So,
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't have much hesitation. I mean, as I've got to meet other people that have played, there were some people that would bring up stuff that they do. And I'm like, I would never have that a part of my campaign ever. And I think it's just kind of that old saying, different strokes for different folks. So some people can handle certain things and then some people can't. So
yeah,
I agree.
Man, I think I never really had any problems. Well, I guess like, you know, I hadn't really heard of D&D honestly before we started playing, and my family never really played D&D or anything like that either. And I come from an Hispanic family too, part of my family, so like it's not really a thing, you know, in Latin America. At least it's not as popular as it is here in the States. So that was something that, you know, I, you know, just took time in learning about it. And but I had always heard it from, you know, just from media and people always talking about it. I think when I had mentioned it to some other friends or like, oh yeah, D&D, like, is like, can Christians play that? I mean, I would be asked that, like, is that okay for us to play? And I think, and that kind of goes into that next question, you know, the main question of this whole podcast, can Christians play D&D? And, I mean, the answer is yes, because we play D&D. So, but it's also kind of, being cautious of how we play it. Like we were saying, you know, it's ensuring that, you know, we're even watching kind of how we're playing it. And, you know, if we keep, you know, I guess if we keep using a character that's just morally not right, or maybe something that's evil, or like super evil that you want to keep playing, or as a DM, if you keep introducing those storylines and there's not really much of a good versus evil, then or a good overcoming evil, then I don't know. I think sometimes people can really get into it, that it can affect even like your mindset. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, because like a lot of times when you watch movies or you watch things like that, you become emotionally attached to these characters, and whether it be positive or negative, I mean, that can affect you. So yeah, I totally agree. I think it can, if you play long enough, it can have very negative, you know, consequences and impacts. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just very much recognizing your limit, using discernment, praying for discernment, figuring out what you think you should or shouldn't play as. And I remember when I was working at a church up in Vermont, I was talking to this family. Their kids wanted to play, and so we talked about me DMing, but their parents are hesitant because it's like, well, they have different deity worship. It can get really dark. And I'm like, I get that. I totally get that. We ended up just not playing at all, out of respect for the parents' wishes, which I'm totally fine with. But I do remember kind of saying to them, I'm like, the beauty about D&D is like, if you don't want it, you don't have to have it. If you don't want to have like a ton of magic, you can just create a world where there isn't any magic, and you just write that out. Or you can have like no different deities in it, and you can just have a sorcerer or a wizard as the source of magic, and then have fighters and archers and or rangers and stuff like that. And so you can have pretty much you are in control of it. Your DM is in control of it. And something that I say always at the beginning of session 0. For those that don't know, session zero is kind of like when you meet with all the party. What I do as a DM, I ask, what do you want to get out of this? What are some things that you don't want to get? Here's some rules and expectations, like the rule of cool. Like if I don't know the rule and no one else knows the rule, we'll just do it and play it cool. And so I'm going to have like a whole Word document of like my session 0 to like go through for everybody. So, and I have an open door, quote unquote, open door policy, right? Of just being like, hey, if you find yourself uncomfortable, you don't need to bring it up like in the group. You can just DM me on Discord and say like, hey, I'm uncomfortable with this. And I'll be like, hey guys, we're going to stop it. Someone's uncomfortable. I'm not going to say who, because they don't need to be said who. And then I just kind of do a hard stop on that, and we just don't do that ever again. So,
yeah. And I think that's why I think you really need to, a lot of times it's up to the DM, you know, it's DM setting those standards from the very beginning. So, you know, whether you're maybe a parent listening and you've never played D&D and you kind of want to hear what it is, let's talk a little bit, like for those who are listening who don't know at all what D&D is, like zero knowledge of D&D. How would we best describe what D&D is? Like, how would we talk about that? So
role playing. Yeah, it's just basically role playing. I mean, you're just playing a character, make believe, kind of like Barbies. Yeah.
My sister said that to us. She's not a D&D fan at all, and she's like, you all are basically just playing make believe and playing Barbies. I'm like, you know, I'm yeah. Well,
she's not wrong.
I mean, especially when she walked in and we had our little miniatures on the table and we were moving around at the time during our fight scene, and she's like, see. Mm-hmm. I was like, no, you're right. Just kidding.
That's hilarious.
So for those listening, so you have your different races and your classes that you're choosing, and you're building your character. And there's different types of characters, you know, as Jord'n was, you know, are different kind of classes and races that you can be, you know, you can be a fighter that's an elf, or I'm trying to think of it. I'm literally, my mind's blanking on combinations right now. Or you could be
be a pirate.
Aarakocra monk.
Yeah.
As I played,
as you have played, and it was
which is a bird person, basically.
Yep.
So
I don't know. Did we talk about it in the D&D episode, or we talked a little
I don't know. We can bring it up again. I'm fine with it. I think it's a great story.
So like when we had been playing the last campaign, you know, you were playing, I feel like we mentioned this in this last episode.
We talked about it. I don't know.
I think it was in the
if we talked about it.
Well, it
was in the first. It was in the first.
It was the one that released at the time of recording this, the one that released whenever the D&D movie, I think it was part of that one. But anyway, you know, my character had said, let's just kill two birds with one stone. And your character is like, are you what? It's like, I'm so sorry. No. But like, honestly, your character, you can be anything. I think that's a big part of it, is being anything that you want to be. And anyway, so like once you have that down, you're good. That's your character. Your character has different stats and different abilities than everyone else. Every character has a flaw. And you're making up your own background, your story for your own character. It's creating someone from scratch, really what it is. And so the DM, which is the dungeon master, in case you were like, well, DM, what is DM? Dungeon master. The dungeon master comes in and pretty much brings all of these characters into a story. And it's improv. It really is. And honestly, like there's a lot of cool things that happens within that. It could be anything you literally want. It could be the DM can create a story, a campaign. A campaign is essentially more than one session. So if it lasts longer, it could be a mini campaign, a smaller campaign, you know, where it's maybe just a 3 session and then the storyline ends, or it can be a campaign that lasts years or weeks. I mean, it could be as long as you want, as short as you want. You also have one shots, which one shots are those that it's just a 1 session thing. Obviously, one shot makes sense, but it could be a 3 to 4 hour, you know, story that just starts in the beginning and ends that same night. If you're one to don't want to get invested in a whole big campaign and maybe time, that's probably the best for those who have crazy schedules, is just do some one shots with your friends and have fun with that. Or if you're okay doing a campaign that maybe you'll be playing once a month or once every other month kind of thing. But especially I know as everyone's schedules usually get busy. That's the thing with like Dungeons and Dragons. It's so hard to get everyone on a night, especially as adults. If you're a teenager and you're in college, you can play like every single day, go for it, you know, if your parents allow it. But honestly, for adults, that's probably the hardest thing, is for all of us to be able to get together and play. But that's essentially, I mean, what D&D is. And a lot of the times it is good versus evil. It's us joining as a team, the most random group of people coming together and defeating evil or solving a mystery. It's that. I mean, they can all show up together just having dinner in a tavern or an inn at the very beginning. That's usually where it starts. That's the majority of them, how they start. But after that, they join together and you're improvising. You can have the weirdest accents you can have. You can have a British accent. That was really bad. I can't do it on the spot. I have to think about my accents before I go. Or an Irish accent, you know, or whatever it is. You know, you can be whoever you want to be. And I think that's one of the interesting things about D&D, especially, you know, we always have to look at the reason as to why we want to play D&D. And I think that's where, as Christians, we have to watch our hearts and our motives behind playing any kind of game. I mean, it could be video games, it could be role-playing tabletop games, it could be any kind of fandoms that you're getting like really addicted or obsessed with. And we've talked about this in other other episodes, but it's also really asking that question of like, why are we playing D&D? Is it because I want to escape my reality? I mean, it goes back to escapism.
Yeah. I mean, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head, just being like, why do you do it? You know? Because I think it is very easy to just escape into the world of D&D. It's very easy to think a lot about it. I sometimes have to catch myself thinking about it, spending too much time watching YouTube videos on it, because I do very much love D&D. I very much love the lore, the world, the mechanics, the gameplay, the storytelling. I love having a good story to tell everybody, even people that don't play. And I also think it's a great way to keep in touch. That's one reason I play it. So the campaign that I've been part of for a year and a half, we took like 3 or 4 months off because two of them, the DM and her husband, they were a part of the campaign, ended up moving down to Florida to be back with their family. And so we get on Discord, and so we play every other week. And so this is a great way for me to keep in touch with them and keep up with them, even though that they live on another part of the country. So that's a really good way for me to do it. And a good reason for me to do it. But I do also need to catch myself. I mean, I remember this one time I was having a really hard day at work. A lot of people have confessed some stuff to me, and I just wanted to like check out from it. And I remember I felt the temptation to just get home, work on my campaign, and just not check into those feelings in myself and with people that I care about and trust. But I didn't. I kind of was like, no, I'm going to talk to the people that I trust and accountable. And then I just did. And it was really good. And truthfully, I think, and then after I checked in and confessed where I was at and how my day was, I felt I did work on my DM, on my campaign. And I felt like the creative juices were flowing because I wasn't trying to escape. And I think it was just better that way than to not use it as an escapism, but really just to use it as a way that, I hang out with friends. So
I agree. I mean, Mary knows this. I've painted and been drawing and stuff since I was like itty bitty, and I stopped and actually haven't painted for years because I don't even think I've ever told you this really, but I used to use it all the time as a way to escape. Like childhood issues, stress, like life. I would literally lock myself in a closet in the art room with a projector that was my only source of light. And I would just sketch and draw, and I would paint, and I would skip classes to paint, but I had good grades, so they let me. But I would do that all the time. And it got to an unhealthy point in my life. And then when I was saved and I came to Jesus, I realized that I was using it as a crutch. And so, and by that point, I had already kind of just been, I'd done it so much that I was kind of burnt out. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I would love the idea to pick up a brush again and to pick up a pen again and draw and do the sketches. But I just don't. And that's the consequence of it. I mean, you just have to be careful, and you have to know your limits. You know what I mean?
And I mean, it's in those moments, when we're trying to just escape from whatever is going on in our life, it's our first reaction should be to go to God and to go to scripture. And, because I think that's like one of the things that I kind of have that personality where like I just get into so many different types of hobbies, and I'll escape into those hobbies. And a lot of times it's because I am like, if I start being really creative on my end, is because I'm having a healthy relationship with the Lord. Like I'm in a space where just, songs will come out. I'll just play keys. I'll learn an instrument, or I'll start, I'm literally in a craft table right now where I have, all my podcasting stuff, my keyboards here, my guitars here. Then I have a mannequin and a sewing machine here too. And it's like, you can literally, Des, you've been over to my room. It's like, you could probably pick out like probably 10 different hobbies that's happening in this room, and it makes no sense how they all come together.
And you're stamping. You're stamping too. Your wax stamps.
Well, it's not stamp. Well, it's funny because my dad actually collects stamps. His name's Stanley. Stanley collects stamps. I love him so much. But yeah, but I also do the stamps for wax seals, and like I got into whole like the Jane Austen Society and into that whole Regency side. Anyway, that's totally not even really nerdy, but I guess it is nerdy in that way. But anyway, but a lot of the times, you know, sometimes I can escape into those different hobbies or those different, or whatever it is, you know, instead of just sitting down and being quiet and being still with the Lord. With D&D, I think that's something that, I don't know if y'all listen to that second episode with Joe Thompson and Micah. We talked about, you know, being obsessed, and he talks about it. It's like the reason why he doesn't play D&D is because he knows he has, you know, he has a tendency of being addicted to things that he loves and being obsessed with things. And so that's one thing, at least with D&D, it is, you know, a little bit easier not to get as addicted to D&D, but it's easy to, if you are in a campaign or even like researching, if you're a DM, especially if you're a DM, it's something that you are creating a world from scratch. And I've DM'd a couple of times now, and man, the amount of effort and everything that I put into it, like, which is great and all, but man, it just took so much of my time, and I had to really learn how to balance, you know, spending time with my family versus I'm creating this whole world or a campaign, and or not just that, you know, I wanted to be Matt Mercer and have his really great, like, you know, fight scenes that he has, and it's amazing, and just the figurines and all the actual physical part of fight scenes like that he has for everyone. And I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Did I try doing that one time? Yes. Did it fail? Yes, but it worked, you know. But I remember I put so much time into that whole week, and I'm like, I felt like that's all I did. I'm like, what did I do that week? I don't know. I just created this. Going to bed till 2 a.m. every day.
It's a balance. Yeah, I was going to say it's a balance. That's one reason why I'm kind of I am very hesitant in taking on the role as DM. I always have been, because I am a perfectionist in that way, to the point, and D&D is something that I actually genuinely enjoy. And it's a fear of mine to take on that position and become obsessed with it to the point where it's unhealthy, to make it the only thing that I focus on and think about because I want to do a good job at it. And so I kind of made a promise to myself that I wouldn't do it, even though it seems like it would be the funnest thing to do. Just because I know my limits, and I know, like, mentally where I would be at if I did that, and it would be unhealthy for me. So I just choose not to. So yeah, I get where you're going.
And I think you also need to balance with the aspect that creativity is good for you. It's good to be creative. It's good to express the creation. I'm thinking of in Genesis how the first thing that God asked Adam was, hey, go out and name all the names. So he created something. That was the first thing Adam did.
Yeah.
He was creator, because God is also creator. The first person to ever be anointed with the Holy Spirit or be filled with the Holy Spirit was Bezalel. I always butcher his name. And he was the guy that created the tabernacle. It wasn't a speaker. It wasn't a warrior. It was an artist, someone that created something. And so I think you also have to balance it with that, right?
Because it's so good to create. Like, that could be your,
it's very,
you know, especially on your Sabbath, when you're taking that time just to rest in the Lord and just like sit still and paint and think of the Lord while you're painting. Like, that is your worship. You know, sit down and write a song. That is your worship. You know, sit down and just enjoy nature and crochet, you know, while you're thinking about God. That is your worship to him, you know. And I agree. It's a healthy balance of, you know, it's back to the question, why are we, you know, why are we playing D&D and playing all of this? Is it because, again, we want to just not deal with our current issues? Yeah. And I even like another part, and also I think what y'all were saying, you know, if with DMing, like if it's something that's just too much of your time, and it's, especially if you've been campaigning if you're a DM for a long campaign, that's going to be harder on you. And maybe it's one of those things where maybe you switch off with one of your friends to DM a couple of times, or do a one shot in between, take a break, you know, have someone else DM a mini campaign. Rely on your friends, like, get your community. You know, and another part of that too, I think, with, you know, Christians playing D&D for, when I was, what year was this? I used to live like in Nashville. I live in the Middle Tennessee area now, but when I lived right in Nashville, there was a place in town that would always have like you can just show up and play D&D with strangers, complete strangers.
I think that was like,
did I do that?
Yeah, I think that was like 2017.
Yes.
It was 2017.
And honestly, yeah. And it was amazing. I would just show up with complete strangers. I don't know any of these people. I would just show up and I'm like, all right, I got my character, I got my dice, I'm ready to jump in. And honestly, it was weird because they were playing Dragon Heist at the time. So like I jumped in at a time. I'm like, wait, so what happened last session? Because every single time you play, it's different people. So the DM will have to like recap. I'm like, this is where you're at now. And this is what you got to do. It's the weirdest thing ever. But wow. Yeah, it was hard because I'm like,
every time we would come over up there in Nashville to do a campaign, you would talk about it and say, oh yeah, I went here. I was here like 2 or 3 times this week.
It was on Tuesday nights. Yeah. It's so much fun. But here's the thing. It's so interesting. This is my experience. And again, it cannot be everyone's experience, but I find that a lot of folks who do play D&D tend to be not Christian at all, or don't, they're atheists or agnostic. Yeah. And that's what's so interesting about it, because it's in those kind of settings, as you start to go regularly as a Christian into, it's like as if you work in in your workplace or wherever you are, you're going into the world and doing this and playing D&D with complete strangers, and eventually have, you form friendships with them, and that's your way of showing the gospel of even how you play. Honestly, that's so important. Like the way you play around strangers when you're playing D&D, or maybe friends who are not Christian, how you play D&D, really, they're watching how you're playing as well. Mm-hmm. And so like, if you're like a believer and you love Jesus, and then, but your character you're playing is complete opposite, and it's maybe grotesque or cussing up a storm. I don't know what it is. It could be anything, but like it almost, I don't know. You have to also, that's just my opinion of just making sure that you're really watching how you're playing around those who are not Christians and unbelievers.
No, I think that's a great point, because when you invited me into the campaign that we were all 3 of us were a part of, I created like this really goody two-shoe character because I didn't know where everybody was at with Christianity. And I didn't want to come across as like this dark, brooding, evil person. I wanted them to understand, like, no, like I care. And it was just a little way that I did that. Yeah. Right. And I was able to not be a jerk in the campaign. And while like the one that I'm a part of for a while, my character is a little bit darker. I say a little bit, he's pretty dark, but I also prefaced with the DM, I was like, hey, I want to see a redemption arc with this person. I want him to be dark, and I want him to be rough around the edges, but I want him to eventually become really good and get out of this darkness. And so I was like, that's kind of what I want out of this character.
Yeah,
it's good.
And so I think it is really important how you, especially, man, when you're going to places like that where you just don't even know the people, just using discernment. Don't be the bad guy that tortures people, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
My character kills everyone. I was like, what? Like, wait, your teammates?
Oh, man.
If they do well, I will spare them.
Oh my gosh. Oh man.
Like, okay.
But there's, I don't know if y'all have heard, I think I've talked about it with you guys of, man, I got to find the name of that new D&D Christian campaign set in the time of Jesus. It's set in between, I think it's like, it's leading up to the New Testament, leading up to like the birth of Jesus, I believe. And you're playing in that world, but like you hear of what's happening like in the word, like in the Bible. You're hearing all the stories in your campaign, but you're in your own thing. Like you're dealing with like, the Romans and the government, that's the government. And it's so interesting. And so if you're you're like, I'm not sure about playing, the 5th edition or the editions that we have with D&D, there's other editions also out there that kind of really even have the same concept of playing D&D. And so that's like one of the things, like if you're like not sure about this, like there's also Star Wars versions. There's
Star Trek.
Other versions. Exactly. Mm-hmm. If you're not like more of a, I would say more of, how would I describe D&D? It has a Lord of the Rings vibes, traditional,
fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you don't want to go towards fantasy, if you want to do more sci-fi stuff, there's D&D sci-fi campaigns that you can play. Or again, I'm going to put it on the link on whenever I post the episode, you'll see the link to that Christian one, but it's so interesting. So, I mean, there's other options like that out there. If maybe you're a parent listening and you're not sure yet, you can guide your teenager or whatever, into that, playing that game. Or maybe if they're, younger, even younger than that, and they want to start playing, that might be a good route for them to start with. What age do y'all think that kids should start playing D&D or can play D&D?
I think it really just depends on their maturity level and where they are, especially like with their own walk with God. And it varies from person to person, because you can have 2 13-year-olds and one could be 5 years mentally older than the other one and be able to actually handle something like that and be confident in who they are. Yeah. So, I mean, it really just depends.
And so, Jord'n, I know you teach the youths.
I would say a parentless campaign. So a campaign that does not have any parents of the kids in it would be, my gut reaction would be 16, maybe 15. Because I've met people, I mean, a good friend of mine, he's been playing since he was like 6, but his dad's been always the DM.
Oh, I love that.
And so,
that's cool.
Yeah. So it's been a family thing. So it's kind of like the idea of like the parent can set the tone.
Yeah.
The dad is like, all right, like I don't want my kid exposed to this stuff, so I'm not going to have it in it. Like plain and simple. So I would say ultimately honor your father and mother. So if your parents are like, yeah, you ain't playing, it's like, sorry, bro, you're not playing. So it is, I don't know. That's kind of mine, is like, it is unfortunate to miss out on stuff that your friends are playing. So, because if your friends are also playing and then your parents are saying no, like I empathize with that. You do have to recognize like your parents, they love you and care about you and they want you to, do what's best for you. And sometimes missing out on stuff that your friends are doing is the best thing for you. So yeah, that'd be my gut reaction, is a parentless campaign is 16. I also know one person, he's talking with his students. I think he's a freshman leader. He's talking with his students about doing a campaign together. And so, he's running it by all of his parents. He's going to kind of give them some expectations and whatnot. Because that's kind of what I do when I DM. I set I have a Google Doc, and then I just kind of put what do I expect this campaign to happen? If I ever had students be a part of my campaign, that's what I do. I just tell the parent that the week before that we meet, be like, hey, this is what we're planning on doing. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to playing D&D more, because that's what I miss a lot. And it's been a while, so we're trying to get it together. But thank y'all so much for jumping on this pod. And is there any other thoughts on D&D that y'all wanted to share for Christians, or word of advice for anyone who's brand new, who's a Christian brand new, jumping into D&D?
Say, just don't be afraid of keeping your mind open to the possibility of playing D&D, just because it's not exactly like back in the day, like what you would think, like super dark, you can like Jord'n said, you can really make it anything you want. You can go Pirates of the Caribbean. You could do, you can do whatever you wanted to do. You can make it family friendly. You can make it more adult. It really just depends on what you want. And what you're comfortable with in your walk with God and those types of things. So I think it's, just be open to it.
Yeah. I think finding some solid people that you can, trust doing it. So for mine, it was a life group. So guys that knew that I've been walking with in life in my Christian walk for, I think 8 months before we started doing that. So just finding a group that you really trust to do that. Not that I think you need to because you're not going to talk about all the, I don't know, worldly things in it. Because you can just cut it out. You can just tell the DM, be like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. And your DM, don't be offended if the DM's kind of well, I kind of want some of this stuff in my campaign. It's okay to not be a part of a campaign. Sometimes that's just best. That's why I really like Session Zero. Sometimes you hear stuff that people want to get out of it, and you're like, I don't want any of that, and then you find out that this is not really a good group to play with. So, and that's okay, and be okay with that. You're not meant to please everybody. You're not meant to.
Right.
Yeah, you can still be friends. Anybody that's trying to figure out, that is like interested in playing, that wants like info videos, I always point them to Dungeon Dudes. They're always really good. They got really good content of like how to play the game, how to do this, how to different classes and whatnot. They do a really good job, I think. So I always kind of point people to that whenever I DM, is be like, and I'll post videos of Dungeon Dudes and be like, hey, this is a really good one that I think you guys should play, or guys should watch. So
yeah, I think back what you were saying, like I agree. It's just be okay with sharing what you want out of the campaign. Like I think even your non-negotiables, to be honest, it's really important. Like, hey, I don't feel comfortable doing this, and and all that. Like it's be okay if they like don't disagree or whatever. It's okay. It'd be fine. You're going to be okay. It's fine. And, but yeah, sweet. And, yeah, if y'all, have any questions on D&D or any, thoughts, any other thoughts that y'all want to share, feel free to, email, we have an email, nerdsandjesuspodcast@gmail.com.
Wow.
It's just a Gmail. Yeah.
Official.
It's just oh wait, just kidding. I totally said it wrong. nerdsandjesus@gmail. I had to double check that. I was like, that doesn't sound right. Yeah. But you could also share it on we have a Patreon page, so you can share it on whenever you join there, we have a Discord, you can go in there, or Google, my brain is dead right now. Facebook group also. You can post it on our Facebook group.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Thanks. It's not really that late too, so I have no excuses. I had a full nice 9 hours of sleep. So
listen, I wish. Can we switch?
Listen, granted I don't have children, so you have a child.
Yes, that's very true. Which by the way, I'm so excited to get him started into D&D.
He's like,
obviously not right now.
He just turned 1.
Yeah. Start him young.
It's like you just started now. He's like a 1-year-old. He's just like, all right, you started.
He's 15 months, guys.
So you started in the kitchen with the baby bottle.
All you did was clap, but it was okay.
I'm telling you, I think that's one of the things I look forward to whenever I have kids is let me tell you, the bedtime stories are going to be hype. It's going to be a whole thing. We are going to go into adventures. Let's jump into it. And that, what if it's instead of bedtime stories, you're just playing your campaign for 30 minutes?
That'd be so fun.
Good.
At the end. Good. Wait a minute. Is that a thing? Is that an actual physical campaign of bedtime campaigns for children?
Bedtime campaigns for babies.
Adam Sandler's bedtime stories come to life.
I'm telling you. But I'm serious. It could be for the elementary age student.
That would be fun.
I gotta delete that from this episode so that no one steals my idea.
Listen, we have 2 kids already in our friend group, so we might as well just kind of start.
I'm telling you, what? Ooh. All right, I'm gonna write this down so that I can copyright it. Sweet. But yeah, appreciate y'all. Thank you all so much for jumping on this episode again, since it did not record last time. And so we just had a great conversation about D&D, for 30 minutes.
It was great.
I think I repeated some things. I try to remember what I said because I'm like, oh, I want to say it again, but I have no idea. It's
nothing.
been a long time since then.
I also was trying to remember, did I say this in the first one? Did I say this? So
I remember nothing.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't miss anything that I said.
It's okay. But anyway, thank y'all so much for jumping on the pod. Is there any socials that you want folks to follow you at, or you want anyone to know? Anything, it could be about anything you want.
I am starting my Etsy shop. I think I said that.
Yeah. Desi's Digitals.
Yeah, Desi's Digitals. So just be on the lookout for that. I'm still in the process of creating and editing and doing that stuff until.
Yeah.
So yeah, just be on the lookout on that. Dezerae Minir. It's my name for everything. Yeah. So, yeah.
What about you, Jord'n?
I have an Instagram, Jord'n_Bay, but no A, because my parents wanted something weird. So it's just JORD.
Apostrophe in your name.
There is an apostrophe, but not in my Instagram handle. So because Instagram discriminates against apostrophes, and you can have one on there. So it's JORD_N_Bay. And I am also drinking a ton of water. I just want everyone to know that.
I have a question, Jord'n. I have a question before we wrap. So
I have an answer.
I'm sure you do. I'm very curious about this. So with your name and how it's spelled, when you had to do bubble tests, like those traditional tests, how did you do that with your name?
So that really depended on the teacher. Because I'd always ask, how do you want me to do that? Most of them was just said, leave a space.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it'd be JORD space N.
That's very interesting. I know mine is like all over the place with a Z and an R and like all kinds of stuff in it. So it's like it took me took me twice as long as anyone to bubble in and do all that stuff. So I get it.
I have the most basic name, Mary Howell. And I joke about it because I'm Hispanic and like my mom's like full name is like Maria Guadalupe Valdivia Diaz de Howell, you know, like it's a full on name. And my dad is like Stan. And but it's funny because my sister got an actual Hispanic middle name. And I mean, I have my dad's complexion. I'm completely white. And I joke, I'm like, Mom, you guys gave me the whitest name for your whitest child. Come on. Something. Throw me a bone here. My middle name's Elizabeth. I'm like, come on. It was so funny. But anyway, yeah, so fun fact. So there you go. All right. Well, thank you all so much just for joining on this pod. I'm sure this will not be the last time our listeners will listen to y'all on an episode. But thank you all so much again for joining. And for all you listeners, we will see y'all next week. We're going to be talking Harry Potter. All right. We'll see y'all then. Welcome to the segment of the episode where I will read out the top nerdy news of the week. First, we got the Continental from the World of John Wick teaser trailer has been released. And a little bit about this show. The 3-part event will explore the origin behind the iconic Hotel for Assassins centerpiece of the John Wick universe through the eyes and actions of young Winston Scott as he's dragged into the hellscape of 1970s New York City to face a past he thought he left behind. Winston charts a deadly course through the hotel's mysterious underworld in a harrowing attempt to seize the hotel where he will eventually take his future throne. So this Continental series release date will be September of this year. So something to look forward to you for all those John Wick fans. Second, we have the Stranger Things animated spinoff series, and it's coming to Netflix. There's not much details about the spinoff animated series. In a statement from the Duffer Brothers, we've always dreamed of an animated Stranger Things in the vein of the Saturday morning cartoons that we grew up loving. And to see this dream realized has been absolutely thrilling. We couldn't be more blown away by what Eric Rolbs and his team have come up with. The scripts and artwork are incredible, and we can't wait to share more with you. And so super excited about what it's going to look like. What I've been writing online, it's pretty much going to be something like our nostalgic from Saturday morning cartoons. So really excited about what that animated spinoff is going to look like. And third, we have the Marvels trailer that has been released. This is super excited. If you haven't watched Miss Marvel, go back and watch it. It is phenomenal. It is probably honestly one of my favorite Disney Plus Marvel TV shows that they've released. And it's so good. You know, this trailer, I'm not going to really share so much about the summary of this trailer in case you haven't seen Miss Marvel, but definitely go back and watch it. I mean, we see Captain Marvel, we see Monica Rambeau and also Kamala Khan all come together. And it's really fun. So definitely go back and watch it. This is the Marvels teleports to theaters this fall on November 10th, 2023. So super excited. Make sure that is on your calendar. And fourth, Eddie Munson gets a Stranger Things prequel novel. So this is really interesting. Another Stranger Things news of the week. But yeah, this origin story is, from our favorite metalhead, from Stranger Things. It's going to be called Stranger Things Flight of Icarus. It's going to be a book. And so it will detail Eddie's time before we met him on Stranger Things 4, 2 years before to be exact. So the story will focus on Eddie's quest to achieve his musical dreams and record music. And so the only trouble is Eddie has no money, and that's where his dad comes in with the scheme. And so according to the official plot synopsis, it's a risk, but it pays off. He will finally have a one-way ticket out of Hawkins. So super excited about that novel. It is going to be released on Halloween, October 31st. So make sure to go ahead and get that novel whenever it comes out on stores, or you can go ahead and pre-order it. And that's our top stories for the nerdy news of the week. Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Nerds and Jesus podcast. This podcast is produced, edited, created, and hosted by me, Mary Howell. I also run our social media and Patreon page and also did our art. The music is by John Bjork. And if you're looking for a way to get connected into the Nerds and Jesus podcast community, you can follow us on social media at Nerds and Jesus. And for more bonus content, physical merch, and so much more, you can visit our Patreon page, patreon.com/nerdsandjesus. You can also become a producer level patron as a supreme nerd, where you will get your name read at the end of every episode as well. If you would like to continue to support the show, you can share this podcast word of mouth with everyone you know. You can also review and rate our episode wherever you get your podcast. Anything helps, and thank you so much for listening to this episode. See y'all next week.